Hello champions, welcome to yet another session on English. In today's session, we are going to discuss figures of speech. Now, champions, you all have heard about, you have gone through this term, but still I just want to discuss in order to erase your confusions. Ajir sessionot ami eta interesting topic loisu, that is figure of speech. In this discussion, we are going to take a few figure of speech which are actually used by writers, by authors and poets in their literary masterpieces, or we can say in their literary compositions. Now, what is figure of speech actually? Let's start with the session. Now see, figures of speech is actually some kind of words which enhances the meaning, or it enhances and gives an extra meaning to the concept or to the idea that the writer or the poet has been trying to emphasize or to make us understand. Now, there is a definition for figure of speech, but in order to explain what is figure of speech, we would tell that figure of speech is actually enhances, or it makes the words used by the poets or the writers capable to give us an extra improved, developed or refined meaning to the literal meaning of the words, apart from phrases and idioms. Now, there are figure of speech which are important in relation to your CUET undergraduate exam, because there will be questions where you have to identify. তোমালোকে চিনাক্ত কৰিব লাগিব কোনটো ফিগাৰ অফ স্পীচ এটা ডেফিনিট সেন্টেন্সত আছে। তেনেকুৱা ধৰণৰ প্ৰশ্ন আহিব, কেইবাটাও প্ৰশ্ন আহিব ইনফেক্ট, and there may be questions from the passages, from the comprehension that you will be getting. There also even you would be asked that which figure of speech is used here by the writer, or which figure of speech is there in the comprehension given in your question. So in that way, this kind of discussions, this session is going to help you a lot in trying to figure out which figure of speech is actually there in that sentence given in your question. Let's start. A figure of speech is a poetic device which is used in language to give greater effects to the reader or the listener. He may be a reader or a listener, but he will get an improved version of the meaning, or he will understand in a defined way, in a refined way, when these words will come to his mind while understanding or while listening. Okay? So, the first figure of speech that we will discuss today is simile. Now see, simile is very simple because we use it in our day-to-day life, but we hardly identify it as simile or as metaphor. Okay? Now simile, here in these slides, we have just included the examples. Now, why examples are incorporated in this session? Because the definitions which we give to the students, to you people, the definitions are hardly understood without an example. So, to put on the emphasis on the example and to understand the practical meaning of the figure of speech, we have included, our team has included the examples. And these examples I am telling you are very simple, or we can also term them as the simplest example in order to make you understand and be clear and thorough with the concept of these figures of speech. Okay? The first one is simile. Now, simile is a form of comparison, is a mode of comparison used by the poets, or you can also say used by the writers in their compositions, where they use the word like and as. whenever there is a comparison with the word like as well as, when these two words you can notice in a sentence, you come to know that there is some kind of comparison to one thing to another. So when we compare two things with the words of like and as, we term it as simile. Okay, be clear with the spelling of simile. Whenever you get the options will be confusing in terms of the spelling also. So we will have sessions where we will make corrections in case of spellings, where we will have a lot of MCQs depending on spellings, but students, champions like you make confusions, make silly mistakes while opting, because the spellings, they may have some kind of confusion at that stress level or at that point of time. You tend to make some kind of mistake while opting the correct option because you are not clear with the spellings. So I have already mentioned that be clear with the spellings and here with the spelling of simile. Now the next one, that is the metaphor. In metaphor, what we see, the example. Now the first example, the example is, I wandered lonely as a cloud. Now a person, that is I, the subject, is wandering, or he wandered long before like a cloud or as a cloud. So here he is comparing, actually he is comparing himself with cloud. But because the word as is given here, so we will identify the figure of speech used here as simile. But when there is a comparison similar to like simile, but we don't get the word like and as, where it is omitted. In a comparison where like and as is omitted from the sentence, we term it as metaphor. And here the same sentence or the same meaning is being emphasized in the second example, where I is again compared to cloud, but the comparison is indirect because there is no word like as or like and as. These two words are missing. Here when the comparison is indirect, we term it as metaphor. Okay, champions, is it clear till here? Next we will go to the third figure of speech, that is personification. Now what is personification? Personification, from the term itself we know that something is related with person. Something when related with person, here again the comparison is made with some inanimate object to some animate objects. That means a living thing, or we can say a non-living thing, is compared with some kind of living features, which are the characteristics. Some living characteristics are compared to a non-living thing. For example, here the sentence is, justice is blind. Now see, justice, can we feel it? That means can we perceive or can we touch it? Is it tangible? No. Now justice is something which is aesthetic, a state of condition. It is a state of condition where one can feel justice in his mind. So justice cannot be blind in literal sense, but in figurative sense we are mentioning that justice is blind. Here the attribute or the characteristic that is blind is actually related with human beings, or we can also say animals, anything which is living. The features, the characteristics of a living thing, that means it may be human beings or animals. When those kind of characteristics are applied to something which is not living, then we term it as personification. Yes? Hope till here it's clear. Next we move on to another figure of speech, that is It is not a comparison, I am telling you. This is very important because it is frequently asked. Now these, the earlier three are simpler. But the fourth one is a bit complicated and it is frequently asked in your questions in your CUET undergraduate or any kind of entrance and competitive exams. What is oxymoron? Now what is oxymoron? Oxymoron is a kind of comparison frequently asked, okay? I am just ticking it twice that oxymoron is a comparison of two opposites, okay? Two opposites. With the example it will be clear. A example of ki hoy tumalkor oxymoron or duta opposite features ba characteristics ba objects ami ekeloge milai lom. Jetia eta sentence ote kiba duta opposite concept bujabo bisare, then we term it as oxymoron. The figure of speech used there is termed as oxymoron. For example, he is an intelligent fool. Now, intelligent fool. Can a person be intelligent fool? Intelligent fool. Both these words are totally opposites. Here, the simplest form, the examples are in simplest form in order to make you understand actually what is the concept, what oxymoron is trying to tell you. Now, two opposites, that is intelligent fool, black and white, hard and soft, these kind of examples tell you that something is compared, but both the words or both the references are opposites and we term it as oxymoron. Till here I think champions everything is clear. Yale buji pai asa? We will move on to the next word, but I am telling you, you just jot down in your notebooks so that it will help you to recall them, these figure of speech, to recall them before your exam. Actually before your exam you are totally at loss which one to read first or which one to go. So in order to arrange the chronology systematically, you have to plan actually before the exam. Now as your exams are almost over, one or two papers are left, so you will know that these discussions will help you when you arrange them in a systematic order and you place them in your rough copies, that too in a systematic order. Yes? We move on to the next word, the next figure of speech. Number 5, that is onomatopoeia. Now see, it's a bit confusing when you pronounce it, but it is the simplest form. From the word itself, try to relate. Jihetu ami pronounce korote olop okhubidha jen feel hoise, just try to relate that this word, this figure of speech is actually defining something which is related with sounds. Okay? Something with sounds. For example, the sound itself came in the example too. The swaying sound of the sea. Now, though we will get later on the swaying sound of the sea will also fall under alliteration, but first we will go forward with onomatopoeia, the concept of onomatopoeia, that something which is related with sounds like buzzing, chirping, hustling, any words, any reference to some kind of sounds that we hear. The sounds which we hear, anything which is related with our ears, so that will be termed as onomatopoeia. Okay? Bees buzzing, birds chirping, shores lapping, all the words which are related, which will make you relate to some kind of sounds, we will term it as onomatopoeia. Next we come to the 6th word, that is hyperbole. Now what is hyperbole? Hyperbole is exaggeration, that means too much. whenever we exaggerate, that means whenever we overemphasize any idea or any feeling or any kind of concept, that time when we overemphasize the thing or we exaggerate the actual feeling or thought, we term it as hyperbole. From the word hyper, we can relate to some extent that it is something which is hyped, which is increased in meaning or concept. So here we can term that it is hyperbole, that means exaggeration. The example that we will discuss is, I am dying out of laughter. Here a person is referred, the person who is referred here is actually laughing at a level where he may die out of laughter. Can a person die? Yes, to some extent a person may die if he laughs a lot, excessively. But here, in general terms, a person when he laughs, when he is at a loss while laughing, or when a person has cracked a joke, he may laugh excessively, but he will not die. So there are no such instances that where a person has died because he laughed a lot. But where a person is trying to emphasize that a joke is at a level, that a joke, the meaning of the joke is extreme, or the impact of the joke is to that level that he may die after laughing at that joke when the joke was cracked, for example, or a situation. So anything which is excessive or exaggerated, the meaning, the idea, the thought process is exaggerated, then we term it, the figure of speech that we term it is hyperbole. Now see champions, we have planned a lot of MCQs which are based on this kind of frequently asked questions which will come in your CUET undergraduate exam. And so I will emphasize that you all join, you champions join us in BPS, and you will get a lot of study material here where we are ready to serve you in terms of the study material, and we are going to help you individually in terms of your confusions and all. And we are ready here with a lot of MCQs which are based with the frequently asked questions on the sample papers. So we are providing a lot of MCQs where we will get these kind of figures of speech, and you have to identify which figure of speech. Now because this is a simple discussion where we are just introducing the terms to you people, but when it comes in case of questions, there you get confused because the terms and the concepts related to the terms don't come to your mind at that time of stress. So in order to remove that kind of stress and confusion, you have to practice a lot, and the MCQs that we provide here are in thousands. So you have to, you will be capable to answer this kind of questions. The seventh one, the seventh figure of speech is alliteration. Now alliteration, from the term itself, you can relate that something which is related with repetition. Repetition of what? Repetition of consonant sounds. Consonant sounds means the words or the pronunciation which are related with consonant words, okay, with the consonant syllables. Here, for example, the example will make you clear, because when you were in your 7th or 8th standard, you would have, most of the students have used alliteration in your leisure time or in your break time, and you have used them in your daily conversations, in your conversations with your friends. This example will help you to be nostalgic in some sense. The example is Peter Parker played with a pale pink pillow. Now the word P, the consonant P is referred here. And when the P is repeatedly used in the sentence, here we can identify that which figure of speech is used here? Alliteration. Now, similarly, when the repetition is in case of vowel sounds, then what we do? We term it as assonance. We term it as assonance. Now, what is assonance? Assonance is the repetition of words which are vowel sounds words. Okay, the example will make you clear. For example, your here is here, to here, all your fears. Okay, here what is happening? The sound E is repeatedly used, or you can hear the vowel sounds. Whenever it is consonant sounds, we will say it as alliteration, and when it is the vowel sound, we term it as assonance. Okay? With this, we come to the end of today's short session, because the next session, which will be on figure of speech 1.2, this next session will be more, we will bring you for you a lot of figures of speech with examples, and clearing your concepts, we will conduct one more session on figures of speech. With this, I hope you have understood the introductory part to figures of speech, and hope you will try to revise what I have taught today in this session. Hope you will join me in the next session with figure of speech, with one more session on figures of speech. Thank you for being with us throughout the session.